When Adam first saw Amina, she wasn't just another village girl, she was a storm wrapped in silence. And Amina, though only 14, looked at the 25-year-old Adam not with fear, but with the sharp curiosity of someone who saw right through him. Neither of them knew it then. But this moment would change both their lives forever. Before we dive deeper into Amina and Adam's tangled fate, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because their story is only just beginning. The village of Njoro glimmered like a secret held between the earth and sky. It was a place where time walked slowly, where women sang as they fetched water, where elders sat beneath baobab trees whispering stories that never aged. And in that timeless rhythm lived Amina, 14, bright-eyed and far more perceptive than the adults often assumed. She moved through the village like a quiet observer, her sharp mind tucked behind modest eyes. While other girls her age giggled about marriage proposals and market-day fashions, Amina watched people, their gestures, their silences, the way truth often hid between sentences. On a humid afternoon, as wedding preparations for her cousin's upcoming ceremony filled the air with drums and laughter, a new figure appeared at the edge of the dusty road. A car, sleek and foreign, rolled to a stop, a sight rare enough to hush the chatter of the women nearby. From the car stepped a man dressed in crisp white linen, his posture deliberate, his gaze unhurried. Adam, 25, had returned from the city, not as a boy visiting his roots, but as a man whose presence carried weight. The villagers whispered his name like a question and an answer all at once. Adam, the prodigal son. The city man. Elder, he looks like his father. May the ancestors guide him. Woman, but there's something in his eyes. Like he's seen storms we don't know of. Amina watched him from a distance, her clay pot balanced on her hip. She noticed how he didn't rush, how he took in the village like someone returning to a place both foreign and familiar. She didn't blush like the other girls, she studied him. Later that evening, beneath lantern light, their paths crossed. She was carrying baskets of flowers toward the wedding canopy when she almost bumped into him near the courtyard. Adam, careful. Those flowers look too beautiful to fall. Amina, then perhaps you should move, so they won't. She didn't stammer. She didn't giggle. Her reply was as sharp as the moonlight slicing through the night air. Adam, you're not like the others. Amina, I hear that often, usually from people who think I should be. His laughter was low, controlled, not mocking but surprised. He hadn't expected wit from a village girl, but Amina was no ordinary girl. She carried her intelligence like a hidden blade, not to wound, but to protect. As the drummers rehearsed nearby, their conversation stretched longer than either expected. He spoke of the city, of tall buildings, blinding lights, endless noise. She listened, not with awe, but with curiosity. And then, she asked questions. Amina, do the stars look the same in the city? Adam, no. You can't see them. The lights drown them out. Amina, then perhaps the city is rich, but blind. Her words lingered between them, unexpected and piercing. For the first time that evening, Adam looked at her, not just with the eyes of a man returning home, but with the curiosity of someone meeting an equal across a silent battlefield. Their conversation ended when Amina's aunt called her name sharply. She excused herself, balancing her basket again. As she walked away, Adam watched, not with idle interest, but with a quiet pull he couldn't name. That night, while the village hummed with wedding songs, two minds lay awake under the same sky, one in a woven mat under a clay roof, the other in a guest room filled with city-made furniture. Neither spoke of it, but something had begun. By the time the wedding day arrived, the village had transformed. The dusty paths were swept clean, the trees decorated with strings of marigolds and ribbons that swayed like whispered secrets in the wind. Drums echoed through the air, not just as music, but as heartbeats syncing the entire village into a single rhythm. Amina moved through the preparations like a quiet flame, steady and controlled, while her aunt barked orders at every corner. She carried bowls of scented water for the bridal rituals, arranged baskets of kola nuts, and listened to the elders retelling stories of love and loyalty. But, beneath the festive air, something shifted. Adam had become a presence that even silence noticed. Wherever he walked, conversations paused. His city attire, his measured gait, his deep, searching eyes, he was both admired and feared. It wasn't just his return. It was the weight he carried. The villagers whispered that Adam was not here only for the wedding. Some claimed he was here to find a bride. Others said his father had left him responsibilities that stretched far beyond the city walls. The guests gathered under lanterns that bathed the entire courtyard in golden light. Women wore vibrant fabrics that shimmered like jewels, men dressed in crisp traditional robes. The wedding feast had begun, with roasted meat sizzling on spits, the scent of spices wrapping the air in warmth. Adam sat among the elders, but his gaze kept finding Amina. She was serving drinks to the guests, moving gracefully between tables. And each time their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, neither shyness nor boldness, but a curious intensity. Elder woman, she carries herself like someone twice her age. Companion, and he looks at her like a man who's found something he didn't know he was searching for. Later, as the musicians played a slow drum rhythm for the couple's blessing dance, Amina slipped outside for a breath of fresh air. The courtyard behind the gathering was quiet, the night sky wide and unfiltered, the stars sharp like diamonds. She leaned against a wooden post, lost in thought until she heard footsteps. Adam, I thought I might find you here. Amina, then you must know me better than I know you. Adam, not yet. But I intend to. His words were deliberate, not flirtatious. She turned to face him, and for the first time, she saw him not as the city man, but as someone studying her, carefully, as if each word she spoke revealed a secret map. Amina, why aren't you inside with the elders? That's where men like you belong. Adam, and where do you think you belong? Amina, where I choose. Not where I'm placed. For a heartbeat, silence held them sharp and bright like the stars above. In that silence, Adam saw a mind unafraid to challenge him. Amina saw a man who didn't dismiss her as a child. Adam, you speak like someone who doesn't believe in the rules of this place. Amina, I understand them. I just don't kneel to them blindly. He laughed quietly, not mocking, but intrigued. Few in the city, even among his peers, spoke with such clarity. Adam, you're different. Amina, so I've been told. Usually before someone tries to tame me. Adam, and has anyone succeeded? Amina, no. And they won't. Their exchange carried the rhythm of a dance, not of bodies, but of intellects. In a village where girls were taught to lower their eyes, Amina met his gaze and held it. Amina, go back, Adam. People are watching, and they like to turn glances into stories. Adam, let them. Some stories are worth being told. She didn't reply, but the faint smile that curved her lips was answer enough. She returned to the courtyard, disappearing into the swirl of guests and lantern light. Adam remained in the shadows a moment longer, his eyes lingering on the doorway where she had vanished. In that moment, beneath the endless African sky, something inevitable had begun to take root, quiet, dangerous, and unstoppable. The moon hung low, painting the dusty courtyard in silver light. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird called, but inside the manor, the world was still. Still, except for Amina's heart. It thumped against her ribs like a trapped drum. She had followed Adam's secret note to the abandoned hall, the one behind the main house that no one entered after dusk. The wooden doors creaked like old storytellers when she pushed them open. Inside, candles flickered in an uneven circle. And there he was. Adam stood in the center of the hall wearing a tailored vest that hugged his broad frame, his sleeves rolled up just enough to show his strong forearms. His hair, usually tousled, had been slicked back, though a rebellious curl fell onto his forehead. He looked like a man who knew his power. But tonight, his eyes softened when they landed on her. Amina wore a simple cream dress with lace at the collar, modest, but the way the moonlight kissed the fabric made her seem ethereal. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with things neither dared to say. Adam finally broke it. Adam, I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. Amina, I almost didn't. If anyone sees me here, Adam, then let them see. Her breath caught. The space between them shrank until she could feel the heat of his skin, smell the faint trace of cedar and smoke that clung to his clothes. Amina, you shouldn't say things like that. You're older. You're dangerous. Adam, and you're far braver than you pretend to be. He reached out slowly, like he was asking permission without words, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. The warmth of his fingers against hers sent a tremor up her arm. Then, without music, without an audience, Adam began to lead her into a waltz. His steps were careful but confident, as if he'd imagined this 100 times. Amina stumbled at first, awkward and shy. Amina, I don't know how to dance like this. Adam, then follow me. Their movements grew smoother, their rhythm finding its own heartbeat. The candlelight spun around them as if the world itself had stepped aside to give them this stolen moment. But under the beauty of it, danger pulsed. They both knew what they were doing was forbidden. She was the ward of a wealthy family, he, a man of 25 with ambitions, responsibilities, and eyes that saw her not as a child but as something more. As they danced, their laughter turned into whispers, and whispers turned into charged silences. His hand lingered a little too long at her waist. Her eyes held his a little too fearlessly. Then, outside the window, a sudden flash of movement. Amina froze. The next evening, the sky was restless. Heavy clouds rolled over the horizon, swallowing the stars, and a damp wind swept through the estate gardens like an omen. Amina sat on the veranda, pretending to stitch embroidery, though her hands hadn't moved in minutes. Her mind was still back in that candlelit hall, every step, every glance with Adam replaying like a secret melody only she could hear. She startled when she heard laughter drifting from the courtyard below. She leaned over the railing and saw Adam standing with Layla, the daughter of a wealthy merchant. Layla was 19, confident, and perfectly groomed, the kind of girl everyone expected Adam to marry. Her golden bangles jingled as she touched Adam's arm lightly, laughing at something he said. Amina's heart twisted in a way she didn't understand. Amina, why? Why does it hurt? She didn't notice the woman approaching behind her, Madame Miriam, her guardian, a strict but calculating woman. Miriam watched Amina's gaze linger on Adam with a hawk's suspicion. Madame Miriam, you stare too long, child. Amina jerked upright, fumbling with her embroidery. Amina, I was just watching the guests. Miriam's eyes narrowed. Madame Miriam's, a young girl's eyes should not linger on men like him. You are barely 14. He is a grown man with responsibilities. Dreams like yours end in ruin. The words stung more than Amina expected. But before she could respond, Miriam walked away, her silk robes swishing like warning flags. Later that night, unable to silence the turmoil inside her, Amina wandered into the moonlit garden. The jasmine flowers were in full bloom, filling the air with a thick, sweet scent. She thought she was alone, until a deep voice came from the shadows. Adam, I wondered if you'd come. She turned. He stood near the fountain, half in shadow, his vest undone, shirt sleeves rolled up. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were sharp, searching hers. Amina, I shouldn't be here. Adam, and yet you are. Amina, I saw you earlier, with Layla. Adam raised an eyebrow, amused at her sudden spark of jealousy. Adam, ah. So you were watching. Her cheeks flushed. Amina, it's not my business. Adam, then, why does it sound like it is? Silence fell, broken only by the gurgling fountain. The wind picked up, whipping her shawl around her shoulders like restless wings. Amina, because you looked at her the way she stopped herself. Adam, the way I look at you? Her breath caught. He was close now, close enough for her to see the faint scar on his jaw, close enough that his voice vibrated against her chest. Amina, this is wrong. Adam, maybe, but it's real. Before she could step back, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Amina froze. It was Karim, Mariam's nephew, a proud, arrogant young man who fancied himself her future suitor. He carried a lantern, its light slicing through the darkness like a blade. Karim, what is this? Amina jumped away from Adam, her hands trembling. Adam, nothing that concerns you, Karim. Karim, everything concerning her concerns me. She is my aunt's ward. And soon, my betrothed. The word betrothed hit Amina like thunder. She stared at him, horrified. Amina, no. No one told me, Karim, they will. It's decided. Adam's jaw clenched. He stepped between Amina and Karim, his presence suddenly dangerous. Adam, she belongs to no one. Karim scoffed. Karim, careful, Adam. You're speaking above your place. A man of 25 flirting with a child under my aunt's roof. If I tell her what I saw, she will destroy you. Adam didn't flinch. His eyes burned with restrained fury. Adam, then speak carefully, or it won't be me who's destroyed. The tension crackled like lightning between the three of them. The garden felt smaller, the air heavier. Karim finally turned away with a sneer. Karim, this isn't over. When he was gone, Amina's chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Amina, he's going to tell her everything. Adam then will face it, together. For the first time, she didn't pull away. Above them, thunder rumbled. The first drops of rain fell onto their skin cold, electric, like the world itself was warning them of the storm ahead. And deep down, they both knew this night had changed everything. Amina, did you see that? Adam, stay with me. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Someone was approaching. In an instant, Adam blew out 2 candles, plunging part of the hall into shadow. He pulled her behind a wooden pillar, pressing his back to it and holding her against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat steady, strong. Her own raced to match it. Through the crack, they saw a servant holding a lantern, scanning the room. The light swept dangerously close to their faces before moving on. The servant muttered something in the local tongue and left. Only then did Adam exhale. Adam, you see? Even the night tries to keep us apart. Amina, maybe it's a sign. Adam, or a challenge. The tension between them thickened, no longer innocent. Their eyes locked in a silent question neither dared answer. Not yet. The sound of a distant bell broke the spell. Amina stepped back, clutching her shawl to her chest. Amina, I have to go. If they find me here, I'll be finished. Adam, Amina. She turned before he could say more, her steps quick, almost frantic, as she disappeared into the night. Adam stood there, alone in the flickering candlelight, the ghost of their dance still moving in the air. And somewhere deep inside, both of them knew this was only the beginning. Morning after the storm, the entire household buzzed with an unease that no one dared to name aloud. Servants whispered in corners. Women carried trays faster than usual, and the estate's grand hallway echoed with hurried footsteps. Something was coming. Everyone felt it. Amina awoke to the heavy sound of knuckles striking her wooden door. Servant Madame Mariam has called you to the main hall. Immediately. Amina's pulse quickened. She sat up, her heart hammering like a drum. Last night's memory, Adam's closeness, Kareem's threat flashed through her mind like lightning. She stood, straightened her shawl, and whispered to herself, Amina, be calm. Don't let them see fear. The main hall was a theater of power that morning. Golden light spilled through tall arched windows, casting long shadows across the marble floor. At the far end, Madame Mariam sat on a carved wooden chair that resembled a throne, surrounded by relatives and respected elders of the community. Kareem stood to the right, his arms crossed smugly. Adam was already there too, straight-backed, composed, his face unreadable, though his dark eyes followed Amina the moment she entered. It felt less like a meeting and more like a trial. Amina stepped forward, her steps echoing through the silent hall. Mariam's piercing eyes locked onto her, and for the first time, Amina saw something colder than authority in them. Calculated fury. Madame Mariam, Amina, do you know why you're standing here today? Amina, because Kareem saw me in the garden last night. A murmur rippled through the room. The elders exchanged knowing looks, as if the worst had already been confirmed. Madame Mariam, and tell me, child, what were you doing there, alone with Adam, at such an hour? Amina talking, Kareem talking, in the dark, in the rain? Spare us the childish lies. Amina turned to him sharply, her voice firm. Amina, a lie requires intention. What you saw was truth. You just lacked the understanding to see it. The room fell into brief silence. Not because of her words alone, but because of how she said them. Amina did not sound like a frightened 14-year-old. She sounded like someone who had thought, reasoned, and chosen her stance. Madame Mariam, enough clever words. What concerns me is not your defense. It is your disobedience. You know the rules of this house. You are a ward, under my guardianship, and yet you walked into the night with a man nearly twice your age. A man with expectations placed upon him. Her eyes shifted to Adam. Madame Maria, madam, what do you say for yourself? Adam stepped forward slowly, his boots clicking against the marble. His voice was deep and deliberate. Adam, I spoke to her, yes, and I will not deny it, but my intentions were not dishonorable. She is intelligent, fierce. She sees the world differently, and I value that. Whispers erupted among the elders. Some nodded, others frowned deeply. Kareem's jaw clenched in rage. Kareem, you value a child? This is disgraceful. He's trying to hide his shame behind poetic words. Adam, and you hide your insecurity behind loudness. The tension exploded like dry wood catching fire. Miriam banged a silver staff against the floor. Madam Miriam, enough. Madam Miriam, from this day forth you will not leave your quarters without permission. You will not see Adam. Your engagement to Kareem will be formalized at the end of this month. The words struck Amina like a blade. She blinked, stunned. Amina, engagement? Madam Miriam, yes. It is decided. Your opinions are not required. But Amina stepped forward, shoulders squared, voice unwavering. Amina, you decide for everyone, madam. But tell me, when did you start deciding for my heart? Gasps filled the hall. Amina's words were bold, almost dangerous in this conservative room. Adam's eyes flickered with a spark of pride. Madam Miriam, your heart is a foolish child's fantasy. It is not relevant. Amina, then perhaps your power depends on keeping hearts irrelevant. The hall erupted again. Elders murmuring, Kareem shouting enough of her insolence. While Miriam's face darkened like a gathering storm, Adam moved toward Amina instinctively, as if ready to shield her. But Miriam raised her hand, stopping him mid-step. Madam Miriam, if you take one more step toward her, you will lose everything. Your position, your inheritance, your honor. Adam froze. His eyes met Amina's across the hall, a silent burning exchange. And then, Miriam made her final move. Madam Miriam, prepare the papers. The engagement will be announced publicly at tomorrow's gathering. Kareem smirked. Amina's world tilted. Narrator in one morning, her future had been rewritten without her consent. But what Miriam didn't know was that Amina's mind had already begun writing its own plan. She turned her gaze back to Adam, not as a helpless girl, but as someone thinking 3 steps ahead. And in that look, he understood. The night after the announcement, the estate fell into a kind of ceremonial stillness. The kind that comes before a storm. Lanterns burned low in the corridors. The sound of drums from the distant village festival echoed faintly, and the moon hung pale and swollen above the mango trees. Everyone believed Amina had accepted her fate. Everyone, except Amina herself. She sat by the narrow window, her hands folded over a small leather-bound book. The engagement papers had been delivered to her room earlier that evening, tied with a silk ribbon as if her life were a gift being handed off. She untied the ribbon, laid the papers on the table, and whispered to herself, Amina, they think silence means surrender. They've forgotten silence can be strategy. A soft knock on her door. Adam, Amina. It's me. She hurried to open it, pulling him inside. He was dressed in a dark travel cloak, hood drawn like a conspirator from some forbidden novel. His usual confident posture carried an edge tonight. Adamthiev moved faster than I expected. By tomorrow, it will be announced in front of the entire village. After that, it will be nearly impossible to undo. Amina, then we do what impossible people do, Adam. We rewrite what's been decided. He stared at her, surprised not by her bravery, but by the quiet strategy in her eyes. Adam, you sound like a general before battle. Amina, I've been raised in silence. I've watched how Miriam moves pieces on the board. She underestimates the pawns. She opened her book, but it wasn't poetry tonight. Inside were sketches of the estate's corridors, servant passages, and back gates. Adam leaned in, impressed. Adam, you've been mapping this place? In a while they taught me embroidery. I learned escape routes. Amina and Adam slipped through the narrow servant staircase to a deserted courtyard behind the kitchens. There, 2 loyal allies waited. Fatou, a young maid who had always looked after Amina like a sister, and Yusuf, an old stable hand with quiet eyes. Fatou, are you sure about this? If Madame Miriam finds out Amina, she will. Eventually. But by then, I need to be somewhere she can't control me. Yusuf, the western gate is watched, but the river path is still clear at dawn. There's a trader who leaves every 3 days for the coastal city. If you reach him before sunrise, you'll be gone before the drums announce the engagement. Adam looked at Amina. Adam, if we do this, there's no turning back. They'll call you a runaway, a disgrace. Amina, better a disgrace with a choice than a bride in a cage. Their eyes locked. There was no flirtation now, just shared defiance. Before parting, Adam reached for her hand, but didn't pull her close. Instead, he bowed his head slightly, like a man acknowledging an equal. Adam, when the sun rises, meet me at the banyan tree near the stables. We ride before the village wakes. Amina, I'll be there. But Adam, promise me something. Adam, anything. Amina, if something happens to me, don't stop. Go. Make it out. One of us must be free, even if the other is caught. He hesitated, then squeezed her hand. Adam, then neither of us will be caught. Beneath that ancient African moon, two souls made a pact, not of love alone, but of rebellion. In a world where decisions were forged by elders in silent rooms, their plan was a whisper against a roaring storm. But whispers, if timed well, can shatter walls. And by dawn, nothing would be the same. The first call of the rooster split the silence of dawn. The village was stirring awake, preparing for what they believed would be a day of celebration. Amina's engagement to the wealthy merchant chosen by her relatives. The drums were already being tuned in the square, their hollow echoes weaving into the morning air. But beyond those rhythms, in the shadow of the banyan tree near the stables, two figures waited. Adam stood cloaked, one hand on the reins of a black stallion, the other restless at his side. For the first time in years, the confident man of the city looked uneasy, not because of the plan, but because the girl he waited for was no ordinary girl. She was Amina, and she was now the architect of her own fate. Amina tied a plain scarf around her head, disguising her braided hair. On the table, the engagement papers lay untouched, the ribbon still curled beside them. She picked up the ribbon, studied it for a long moment, then tossed it into the flame of a lantern. The silk curled and blackened until it turned to ash. Amina, they can bind paper. They cannot bind me. Fatou entered quickly, clutching a small satchel. Fatou, the house is awake. Madame Mariam is already dressed in her ceremonial robes. If you leave now, Amina, thank you, Fatou. Whatever happens, remember me not as the girl who obeyed, but as the girl who walked away. Adam's eyes lit when he saw her approach through the mist. She wore no jewels, no silks, only a simple cotton dress, but she carried herself like a queen walking to her throne. Adam, you came. Amina, you doubted me. Adam, never. But I feared hope might betray me. Amina, hope doesn't betray. People do. They mounted the horse together, her arms slipping around his waist. The stallion pawed the earth, eager, as if it too sensed the urgency of this forbidden escape. Drums pounded louder now. Guests filled the square, their colorful robes swaying as they gathered for the announcement. Madame Mariam's sharp eyes scanned the crowd, lips pressed in satisfaction. But when the priest stepped forward with the ceremonial cloth, there was no bride. Villager, where is Amina? Another, perhaps, preparing? Mariam's face darkened. She turned sharply to Yusuf, the old stable hand, but he was gone too, and in that instant, she knew. She had been outplayed. The horse thundered across the narrow trail toward the river, hooves striking sparks on stone. Amina leaned against Adam's back, her voice clear despite the rush of wind. Amina, they'll call me reckless. They'll call me ungrateful. But one day, when they rewrite this story, they will call me free. Adam turned slightly, his voice low but burning. Adam, whatever lies ahead, we face it together. Amina, not together, Adam. As equals. Behind them, shouts echoed. A group of Mariam's men on horseback had discovered the escape. Dust rose in the air as the chase began. Adam urged the stallion faster. But the path narrowed near the riverbank. The trader's boat was in sight. It sailed trembling in the morning breeze. Adam, hold on. Almost there. The horse leapt the last rise, and then they were at the water's edge. Yusuf waited by the boat, waving frantically. Yusuf, quick, before they reach you. Adam dismounted, helping Amina down. She did not tremble, even as the sound of pursuit grew closer. Amina let them come. Today they see not a child. They see the woman they tried to silence. She stepped into the boat, lifting her chin high, eyes fixed on the horizon. The boat pushed away just as Mariam's riders burst onto the bank. Their shouts tore through the air, but the river was faster, carrying Amina and Adam into its wide embrace. And as the drums of the engagement thundered behind them, another rhythm carried them forward, the rhythm of two hearts beating in defiance. The village would tell the story differently. They would call her runaway, disobedient, reckless. But Amina knew the truth. Amina better a runaway with freedom than a bride with chains. And so, under the watch of the rising sun, their story did not end. It began. For freedom, once chosen, has only one destiny: to spread like fire, unstoppable, untamed,